Matthew Ball has just released his early preview for the state of video gaming in 2025. Now, I know there's probably some folks in my audience who are not familiar with the work of Matthew Ball, and if that's the case, I highly encourage you to check out this amazing thinker within the space of interactive media and the broader entertainment media landscape. So basically, this is a thought leader. I'm not actually sure what he does as his day job. Maybe he does investing or something. But this guy frequently does these articles that are just very insightful in understanding sort of the entertainment economy and a lot of these forces that are outside, I mean, within gaming, but also outside of gaming and how they tangentially relate and how they affect and how they all play together in kind of one entertainment economy, right? When it comes to the entertainment industry, I think there was a really great quote, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but there was somebody who had asked the CEO of Netflix. They were like, "Who's your biggest competitor? Are you worried about Disney Plus more or Hulu more?" And he said, "I'm most worried about Fortnite." And that kind of, a lot of people picked up that quotation, and it got passed around a bit, just because it was really so insightful. And it's just this idea that Netflix is operating at a level where he's really focused on this this attention economy, and it's not enough to be the greatest game, right? Because if the game's not great, people will check out a streaming service, and if the streaming service is not great, then they'll go try to play a game. So many of the games these days are kind of increasingly cinematic, to the extent that playing The Last of Us, sometimes it feels like you're just sitting back, or like you're watching a movie, or you're in the movie. And then there's so many of these media giants who are engaging in the entertainment space at the same time. I mean, it's always been the case that Facebook's had gaming and stuff like that, but Netflix has recently had a gaming push, and I think that's all just very interesting. So without further ado, we're going to get into this presentation. Whether or not you choose to stick out this video and watch however much of it that I go through, I do encourage you to check it out on your own. It's going to be linked in the description. This guy, I always learn something new when I read his work, so I highly recommend checking him out if you're not familiar with him already. He's got some really great essays on the metaverse in particular, and I believe he has a newsletter that I'm subscribed to. I think I'm on the free version, and I think like every month or two he gives me just kind of like an update on what his thoughts are about the broader industry, which is, I think, a really good thing for anybody in this industry to do, whether you're actually trying to market your game as something like an indie, or you're working within the larger framework of something like a AAA game industry, and you want to know kind of how your how your role fits into the greater machine, and what other huge machines are out there, right? Because this is a giant industry, and perspective, I think it helps me appreciate it more. Okay, I also tried my best to fix some sound issues I've been having with my microphone, so let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to be having my face in the corner here. Hopefully I don't obscure what's going on. A rough 3 years and the end of the 2011 to 2021 growth wave. All right, so that's where we're starting. Then we're going to talk about mobile, then a review of AR, VR, PC and console market, talking about China, the hostility of modern console versus the PC content marketplace, and then lastly, how player playtime and player spend might return to growth. All right, so wow, it's a whopping 200 pages, with, I guess, that last essay being the majority of it. So we'll see how much we get through. We'll probably jump through a bunch, but I'm happy to make this, hopefully making this a little more entertaining and engaging for people who prefer to have something read to them versus reading it. So from 2011, and also I love learning about this stuff too, so let's do it together. So from 2011 to 2021, video gaming soared. Spending grew at over twice the rate of the preceding 20 years, with annual revenues up 150% overall. Okay, and of course, I would think, coronavirus was a huge factor with getting everybody inside, but I mean, 2011 was showing that this trend, I guess, was in practice even before then. Awesome. All right. So, and what's he measuring here? CAGR? I'm not familiar with that metric. Okay. So there's worldwide consumer spending on the video game content. So people are just spending more and more. It'd be interesting to see this as a bar graph on, what different countries that's coming from. Oh, is he doing it now? Yeah, I think he is. The growth rate didn't just beat its historical averages, it significantly outpaced the global growth benchmarks. 3.4 times the rate of the world real GDP. Okay, so video game content real spend, so he's saying it went up 108% from 2011 to 2021. I wonder why he measured it 2011 to 2021 and not, say, 2015 to 2025. That's it. Whenever somebody does like a weird pricing on a weird selection of dates there, I think, are they playing with the data a bit? Well, it's kind of interesting that he chose that. So the real GDP only went up by 32%. The US GDP went up by 52%. And the Japan real GDP. Why are you dunking on Japan like that, man? All right, Japan's GDP is going down. So obviously they're a big player in the games market. But yeah, I mean that's incredible. 100% increase from 2011 to 2021. It's a big deal. Though a few anticipated a slowdown or even a pullback after COVID, most expected that gaming's growth would continue at high rates, if not accelerate. Oh, interesting. So here we have estimates from a bunch of these different people. So EY, S&P, Ampere, Bain, Newzoo, ARC, and IDC. I don't know who any of these folks are. I've heard of Google, obviously. But so these are, I guess, where the different industry stakeholders anticipated the progression. Seems, frankly, all over the place. I wonder who was right. Oh, only this guy. Everybody was way wrong. So I guess you need to trust Ampere, whoever that is. Instead, spend fell by 3.5% in 2022, then barely grew in 2023 and 2024, finishing flat over 3 years, and thus short tens of billions in revenue versus forecasts. And I mean, we've seen record layoffs in that time period from this industry. So I think that's not a good sign. All right, my face is hiding it, but the date line at the end here is 2024. This decline occurred despite the end of console GPU shortages in mid-2022. And in 2023, arguably the best content release slate in the industry's 70-year history. So here's a ton of amazing games, and I guess he's kind of begging the question, why did it perform so poorly? Yeah, great question. A post-pandemic pullback is an insufficient explanation for gaming's contraction and stall. Spending on books, music, and video continue to grow. And man, that's what I love about Matthew Balls. He's never just focused on the gaming industry. He's pulling in all these other forms of media to kind of give you that context. So we can see that when it comes to books, they're increasing by 4%. Music is increasing by 5.4%. He's only looking at the last 2 years, which is not the 10-year timeline we were just looking at, but I get his point. So he's saying that in the last 2 years, it's going up in all these places. Why is it stalling? Because in the other case, for games, the result has been minus 3.5%. So we're going down 3.5 for games. However, books, music, and digital video are all going up by, just about as much, if not for video, going by like 10 times as much, right? It's going by almost 30% increase. Okay, and so not only does the video game industry now fall short of global growth benchmarks, it's actually shrinking in real terms, down roughly 13% since 2021. Okay, so here we have the video game content real spend. It's increasing by 13%. That's what he's showing us, as he's showing us that the GDP has increased over that time period. So except for Japan. So why does he keep bringing up Japan? Is Japan kind of the canary? Maybe it's called bellwether, like it's kind of indicative of where the gaming industry goes, is where Japan goes? I'm not sure. But okay, so that's unfortunate to see. So gaming is going down even though people are getting more money. So why do you think that is? I'm just going to guess right now, and I'm going to say that I think people are just, well, first of all, costs are continuing to rise, and game costs are continuing to rise while they're not making back the revenues that they used to. And that's something we talked about in my predictions video recently. I think another factor, and this is pretty big, is that video games just seem to have a much stronger staying power than movies, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of people who will play the same game over and over and over again, more so than they will want to watch the same movie again, and kind of be driven to participate in more and more movies as a customer. So I think a factor there, and the reason why it's happening just more recently, is because I think we're increasingly reaching a saturation point within the market. So I don't know if that's true, because obviously there is emerging markets, but that's my hypothesis. I'm thinking probably less people are buying big budget games. And I think they're doing it not because they're playing games less, which I'm sure he's going to go into usage statistics, or at least that's what I would expect him to go into. But I think it's just because they're playing new games less. I think that's the case. All right. It's not just about spend that's declining. Players are too. Okay, so this is not what I thought. Average play time has partly recovered, but this is mostly because less engaged players stopped playing entirely. I see. So he's saying the average has gone up, but it's not because people are playing more. It's because whoever was bringing down the average has completely left the market. Interesting. So here's the share of U.S. population that regularly plays games. So here, I guess, interesting. I mean, I wonder how they measure this. Oh, so it's PC, it's mobile, it's VR, it's a bit of everything. And it looks like it used to be around 75%, 73%. And now... Oh, I see. So sorry, I'm looking at this wrong. So basically, the trend line is down. So it used to be around 77% in, I guess, core Corona, and now it's going down to almost 70%. So it's like down 10%. That's pretty big. And then the average weekly video game play hours rose up, had a huge peak in 2021 area. And I mean, I think that's true of all media, really. I think a lot more people were watching YouTube and stuff like that. And then it went down. Okay. Interesting. So the shortfall of players, dollars, and hours versus forecasts, and even versus 2021, has led to an unprecedented number of commercial disappointments or flops. Oh man, okay, I guess this is all of the flops. So obviously some of these games were, I mean, I think pretty well-regarded games. Like this Guardians of the Galaxy was great. I played that one. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong one. But I did play one that I thought was really good. But yeah, there's been a lot of flops recently. Redfall. I was working at ZeniMax when that came out. Interesting. Halo Infinite, a flop, huh? Yeah, I guess it just didn't live up to expectations. That's interesting. I thought that game actually did well. Skull and Bones, obviously very famous flop recently. Outlaws, I know it underperformed sales figures, but I don't think it did so bad it was considered a flop. Is that really the case? Interesting. So the rising failure rates have also led game makers to cancel scores of in-production titles, having lost faith in the business cases that they had approved only a few years ago. Okay, so basically everybody is cutting games that they were planning. So not only do we have flops, but we have games that people are projecting are going to fail, and as a result, they're cutting their losses. They're canceling these games. Okay, interesting. And VC content funding, VC meaning venture capital, I'm sure, has plummeted too, falling 77% from H2 21. I don't know what H2 means. I'm guessing quarter two, but I don't know why it means H, to H1 22 highs. And then back to 2018 to 2019 levels, even despite consumer spending being up, right? So people are spending more money, and yet VC funding for gaming is going way down. And why is that? Is it because they got burned in the crypto bullshit? I'm not sure. The collapse in venture investment dollars comes not just from smaller average investments, but also far fewer rounds and far fewer investors. Okay, so people are just burned out when it comes to VC and game dev, which honestly is not something I'm very well versed in. I mean, I have a few friends who are doing, the VC thing in game dev, but I don't know too much about how difficult I guess it's become recently. It seems like I see a number here, 600, and now it's down at 300. It seems like it's twice as difficult now to maybe get some deals, or at least half as many are happening, maybe. So many of the independent studios founded since 2019 are now closing because they can't find the VC or publisher funding needed to finish their games. How unfortunate. So all these studios, I guess, are closing. Now you got the white text on the black background, right? A very famous format for telling people things that they don't want to hear. Employees have been hit hard, suffering back-to-back-to-back record layoffs. Layoffs might help short-term margins, but they won't restore industry growth. Okay. And I think I wonder if it's just that the growth was unsustainable. Like that's my thought. What I'm trying to imply with the saturation, and I think maybe they're just trying to right size. And I certainly think a big factor of this was just over aggression in the Corona era, and now we're just seeing a particularly pronounced pullback. So I do think that is a factor, but as he's saying, it's I guess not the most significant factor. And what game makers need is growth. Gaming stocks have underperformed the market by 19 to 140% since 2020. Some have lost 10 to 80% of value outright. Okay, so here's our cohorts, and unfortunately our buddies are not doing too well. Unity taking huge plummets. Obviously, they've had a huge PR nightmares recently. CD Projekt Red as well. Roblox, I thought, was actually doing very well, so I'm surprised to see them underperforming. But then again, don't take my word for it. I don't track this stuff. And behind the headline layoffs, there is still meaningful hiring. Most publishers will have more employees in 2025 than in 2022, even net of acquisitions. Yeah, I think that's not good. This industry is growing in a way that's probably unsustainable. So, what's going on? What's going on, folks? All right, no industry has a right to grow several times faster than global real GDP, let alone for a decade. Gaming achieved it through several concurrent growth engines. So he's saying that gaming had all these different ways in which it was growing. Mobile, battle passes, UGC platforms. So I guess he's saying mobile is growing the consumer base. Battle passes is probably growing the retention and revenue from these people. So he's saying there's a whole host of kind of motley factors. Battle royales is kind of randomly thrown in here. I guess he's just saying that was a popular genre. I'm not sure. I don't know if that alone brings in revenue, but I hear what he's saying. He's saying it was hype. All right. So these several growth engines grew the video game industry's players plus playtime plus spend, while strengthening network effects and often amplifying one another. Okay, so here he explains this. And he's saying Battle Royales just happen to be the highest grossing game genre in history. I wonder if that's true. I mean, you think Battle Royales make more money than slot machines? In history? Really? I don't know. Maybe they do. Most popular AAA genre in history. I have no idea, honestly, how much money Vegas makes versus game dev. I should look that up. Nearly all of the top games of the last 15 years have taken advantage of several growth engines simultaneously. Many pioneered them outright. Yeah. Obviously, Roblox has been, a king in terms of content generation. UGC, monetizing it. Minecraft as well. I think they've been trying to support that more and more. Okay. Yet, the old growth engines are mostly exhausted. There are few high-value mobile players left to add, and no new playtime to find. Few games to add battle passes, etc. Yeah, I think this is the saturation theory that I had as well. And that many would-be growth engines have yet to drive real revenue or player growth, let alone generate new market leaders. Okay, so these are the new engines that he's identified. So esports obviously has just been a colossal failure. People who've been following the Overwatch League, I think, have been very disappointed. We've got cloud gaming, which never really took off. There was a bunch of big bets there. I think Google and other people were trying. Subscriptions, I think that's just another word for Battle Pass. I think that's honestly been really well. I wonder what he's talking about here. If maybe he's actually talking about not subscriptions to a particular game, but something more like the modern GameFly, as in what's it called? Game Pass. That's what I mean to say. AR, VR, and LBE. I don't even know what LBE is, but yeah, AR and VR, I'm not really bullish on. Crypto, I don't know if crypto really ever had a chance. App Store regulation. Interesting. I wonder what he's talking about there. With video gaming's growth, engines slowing, it's less surprising that participation, engagement, and spend are all waning. The 2011 to 2021 era is getting old. Okay, so look at this. Spend has not moved much. So he's saying it's kind of stayed consistent. So that's obviously not great. Weekly playtime is going down, and the number of gamers is going down, right? Probably, I think, reaching like a new normal point. I don't think it's a saddle point. I don't really think it's going to get higher. Meanwhile, the industry is facing many new challenges, all while the old challenges have intensified. Okay, so here's some of the ones he identified. So mobile growth has ended. Yeah, I don't think mobile's doing very well right now, frankly. Fear of failure rates, closed app stores, deflationary pricing, rising user acquisition, black hole games. I wonder what that means. I don't know what a lot of this stuff is, because he uses a very different language than I'm used to as a developer. Rising development costs, reductions in game sampling. Interesting. All right, so that's it. A rough 3 years, folks. We got through it. A rough 3 years. Interesting. All right, our next section here is the mobile marketplace in 2025. Gaming's growth is driven by mobile's growth. The form factor is over 2/3 of new spend since 2011 and is 55% of the total market, up from 32%. Wow, that's crazy. I know mobile is huge, but 55% of the total market? That's so insane. And I guess that's just because in mobile, there's something much closer to the Eastern game economies where you just have so many more people who are these giant whales supporting revenue that far exceeds what, other users are doing. I mean, think of it this way. Most people who are playing, Call of Duty all paid $60 for the opportunity, right? But when you get into a game like Genshin Impact, I think there's a few people playing $5 and quite a few people paying, $500 or something like that. So I think there's just greater disparities. I remember that's something that we thought about a lot. I was making a mobile game once, and we kept talking about something called the ceiling, which is that if somebody wanted to spend as much money as possible in your game, how much could they spend and receive value? Because for some games, the truth is, you can only spend like $200, and then that's it. There's not more to buy than $200 worth. But other games, they can keep delivering value to you in thousands of dollars to spend, if not tens of thousands of dollars. So I think there's just a crazy high ceiling in mobile games, which, kind of the mobile economies just lend them to. Interesting. Okay. The iPhone led to billions of new players and hours. But after 18 years, growth now relies on population growth, and smartphone adoption is very low in ARPU markets. Growth now relies on population growth and smartphone adoption in very low ARPU markets. ARPU meaning here average revenue per user. So what he's saying is that previously tons of new people were playing more and more, so that was leading to huge growth. But now there's only going to be growth if more people are playing games, because we've reached a saturation point with the gamers that are already existing. And what he's saying is that in the ARPU markets, which I'm guessing is he's saying markets where people are making considerable money and are doing considerable spend, the adoption is very low. So basically, everybody in the United States who wants a phone has a phone. That's kind of what he's saying. So 3 billion mobile gamers. All right, so what's that? Like half the population? 68% of smartphone owners, 50% of those over age 10. Okay. So there's only 4.5 billion mobile smartphones, and of those 3 billion of those phones have mobile gamers, I guess, piloting them. I guess that's what they're saying. And how big is the market? Here's what he's saying is the market. It's 6 billion people. So he's saying that there's only, 1 billion more people who could even play games with their phones. And even beyond that, there's only another 1.5 billion of amount of people over the age of 10 who don't have a phone and could potentially have a phone. So obviously they're commanding a huge part of the market already. I mean, 70% of people who are smartphone owners are already mobile gamers. So he's saying, Is this the saturation point? I think that's what the question he's begging. So social video is devouring mobile-based leisure time. U.S. adults spend 35, I'm guessing, million minutes? I don't know what the MM means. 35, I'm going to guess million, more hours a day watching TikTok than in H220, H120. I'm not familiar with this. Why does he say H instead of Q? Peak of mobile gaming spend. Okay, so the kids are watching TikTok. And in this case, the adults are watching TikTok. So here's all the adults. So they're watching TikTok. And because they're watching TikTok, they're not playing games, which is exactly what we started talking about here, is just the attention economy is fighting, right? It's like TikTok is the greatest threat to the gaming universe. Those TikTokers, they're taking over. And TikTok's growth hasn't cannibalized other social media platforms. Interesting. So US adults have grown their use of the category by over 10 million hours a day since 2020 to 2021. Okay. So basically, as we can see here, yeah, the other bars are not getting smaller. The other bars representing TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and my face is covering Facebook. No pun intended on the bottom here. So those bars aren't getting smaller. It's just the case that this bar on the top, the golden bar, just keeps getting larger and larger for the most part. And that's the TikTok. So people are spending more and more time. Where's it coming from? It's not coming from these other social media stuff. It's coming from, I'm guessing he's implying, games. IDFA's vicious cycle, I don't know what that stands for. Install volumes down and costs up. Player time spend and ad revenue fall. User acquisition is even costlier, and install volumes go down more. All right, so less and less people are playing games. So if you're thinking about being a game dev or a TikToker these days, maybe you should start making TikToks. Maybe that's where it's at. All right, IDFA and social video have led mobile gaming to lose 2.6 percentage points of its share of all digital media time among U.S. adults since 2020. So that's a 17% drop in time. I see. Okay, so basically, previously mobile gaming took up another 2.6 percentage points of all media time. And because they're down by that amount, it represents a 17% drop. Got it. That's a huge drop. I mean, 17% of the amount of time that someone's playing your game, it's gone down that much. That's crazy. Over 2020 to 2024. And I mean, right now he's kind of bookending the Corona years, right? I think Corona's, I don't know when Corona was. It's like 2020, right? That's when it started, maybe? After 3 years, global mobile gaming spending remains down 8% from the peak, 23% after inflation. The competitive consequences are even greater. Okay. Competitive. As mobile discovery downloads and revenue stagnated, competition ossified. The top 3 titles in US by genre are 40% of revenue. Holy shit. What? The top 3 titles in the US by genre are 40% of revenue? Okay, so, sorry, I thought he meant just 3. So what he's saying is, within each genre, the top 3 games command 40% of revenue. That's gotta be terrible, right? I wonder what it's looking like for film. I imagine that the top 3 releases of the year don't command anywhere near to 40% of the gross revenue for the year, right? That's wild. So that's really bad. It's really bad for new market entrants as well, because an indie dev is certainly not making the top 3 in their genre, right? It's these incumbents that grind and squeeze their players to get every last drop. Oh, man. Consider the biggest new game since 2020. Monopoly Go! It hit $2 billion in revenue in 11 months. But it also spent 500 what does the MM mean? Is that million? On user acquisition, or 36% of net revenue. Well, hey, you know what? Good for them. Good for them making $2 billion. I've never played this game Monopoly Go, but I've seen some ads. Wow. Okay, so what are we looking at here? So this is the gross revenue. This is an interesting chart. App Store fees. You got to give Mr. Tim Apple his cut. Net revenue then. So this is what we got to pay. But we're spending this much on user acquisition. Then this much on licensing. Here's the dev cost. Wow. Wow. That's what... That's how much we make. The developers. That's crazy. So if you're a game dev, this is your piece of the pie right here. You could barely even see it. This is how much the company is paying you. A little tiny piece. And this is how much the ad man gets. Holy shit. This is how much Mr. Monopoly gets. Wow. That's a good deal for licensing. Well, who makes that? Milton Bradley or I don't know who makes Monopoly, but gosh, that was a good deal for them. Holy shit. And then over here is operating income. So it's the rest. Okay, so they're making a lot of money, all right? So this is how much your company makes, and this is how much this is how much your company makes, and this is how much they pay you. Sobering. All right, let's put my face back over here. We'll make me even smaller. All right, let's keep going. Or that while the number of smartphone owners has tripled since 2014, wow, okay. The number of smartphone owners has tripled since 2014. That's crazy. That's the last 10 years. The number of smartphone owners has tripled. And as mobile gaming spend has went from 35 billion to 105 billion, so that's about triple as well, or maybe double, I don't know. There are fewer mobile games. There are fewer mobile games. Wow. That's so interesting. And I think a huge part of that is the iOS App Store's just absurd policy of charging you $100 each year that you're around, which is terrible. It's terrible for the devs, but it means that they can at least they keep their catalog a little light. But wow, so we have some new games, but so many unlisted games. That's crazy. That's so sad too, because you think about all the time that people spent on these games. How many games? Well, if this is negative 200,000, then we're talking about hundreds of thousands of games. Hundreds of thousands of games that were created for mobile and now are not on the store, right? So you cannot play them anymore. And iOS bans you from sideloading the apps, right? So these are games that you can never play again, basically. They're just lost media. That's so sad. It's so sad. It's the destruction of art in many cases. That really sucks. Man, how disappointing. So even Call of Duty is struggling to launch new mobile titles. 2024's Warzone has only 30% of the downloads of 2019's mobile after 9 months, and 5% of the spend. Interesting. Yeah, Call of Duty's not doing too good. Fortunately, part of the Call of Duty Warzone's challenge is that mobile is still thriving. Yet this exemplifies the stickiness of aged titles versus newer, better substitution. So basically in 2024, this guy was doing way better. I don't know. There's a lot going on in this chart. I don't care to learn it right now. With mobile gaming stagnated, app stores, which net $20 billion per year from mobile game developers, are facing renewed scrutiny over their commissions and policies. Yeah, I mean, they've always sucked. The app stores suck. I hate them so much. But that's not new. Take Roblox, the top mobile game ever. For every 100 in player spend, Roblox pays app stores $22. A sum that's nearly all profit for Apple, Google, and they lose $35. Interesting. Can I understand that? What does that say? So if Roblox makes $100, they pay the App Store $22, and they lose $35. I'm guessing the $35 loss that they're referring to is what? User acquisition? It's the gap profit. I'm not sure what gap profit means. I don't know. Maybe one of those A is acquisition. So, interesting. So they're just losing... Oh, gap profit. Maybe what they're talking about is this is how much they would have made if they didn't have those losses. I'm not really sure. Interesting. Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously the app stores are winning, right? I mean, they're the ones who are selling the pickaxes in the metaphorical gold rush. Indeed, Apple and Google likely net more in profit from mobile game sales than all non-China mobile and non-mobile publishers and platforms combined. Holy shit, that's crazy. That's crazy. So if you take all the game devs, non-China, they don't even make as much as Apple. And that's only what Apple is making from mobile game sales. Wow. And Apple is, I think, the most rich company in the world, right? That's crazy. And why is that? I mean, that's because Apple is taking a cut of not the revenue, of the profit. They're taking a cut of the revenue. So even when the game is losing money, Apple is still making money. Wow, wow, wow. All right. So that's the mobile marketplace. Looks pretty grim, folks. Not looking too good. All right. Definitely not interested in AR VR, but let's take a look. Let's see what's going on in AR VR. Annual AR VR spend has grown from $0 to about $1 to $2 billion, but it's too small to attract much investment. Okay. Interesting. AR VR devices have improved, but sales are down. Okay. AR VR sales are also way behind forecasts. IDC now estimates 6 to 7 million headsets sold in 2024. Only a few years ago, they predicted 6 to 7 million per quarter. All right, I wonder who IDC is, but I guess they need to adjust their estimates. So that's pretty different. Though focused on building a general-purpose computing platform, Meta's Reality Labs has now spent $84 billion on AR VR with $74 billion in losses. Yeah, I'm really not bullish on Mr. Zuck's metaverse. Are you? Let me know in the comments if you're bullish on AR VR, because I don't really see the appeal, honestly. I think AR is really cool, but I think most people are not gonna want that. How much and okay, wow, that was a quick section. So how much and where console PC has grown. So the billions spent on each console generation on R&D, subsidies, content, etc. do seem to be growing penetration. Generation 8 more than doubled Generation 6 unit sales. Okay, I actually don't know what consoles we're referring to here with respect to Generation 6 and Generation 8. I mean, 2000, that's got to be the Xbox 360, maybe? And then Gen 8, I guess, is the current gen, maybe? I really don't know. And why do we call it Gen 8? Why don't we just like call it whatever PlayStation we're on? And total console content spend is also 18 billion higher in 2024 than it was in 2011. A roughly 75% increase. All right. So people are spending 75% more. Interesting. 75%, that's a huge increase. But what? It's just not keeping up with expectation? I mean, yeah, I guess if I look at this chart here, it's going up and up and up and up, and then it's kind of plateaued since 2021. That's not good. That's not good for our industry. Yet all Gen 7 and 8 growth is Nintendo. Oh, wow. Wow. All of the growth is from Nintendo. Gen 7 plus 8 sales were also boosted by a lengthier cycle, more placements and household growth. So where's Nintendo's contribution here? Oh, wow. Look at that. This is Nintendo. And this is still Nintendo. Wow. So what did Nintendo release in Gen 7? I have no idea. I guess maybe like a new Switch or something? I haven't really been keeping up with consoles. And even with more upgrades and replacement buys, total American and European console sales are flat versus a decade ago. Only Japan and ROW materially grew. Don't know what ROW is. Oh, rest of world. Okay, got it. So they're going up. Because I guess they don't have the consoles. I bet the Americans who want it probably have, maybe, I bet there's some people watching this video who have a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation 4 in front of them. And then they're thinking, do I really need to add another one next to this? But the entirety of Gen 8 to Gen 6 to Gen 8 console growth in Japan and ROW is Nintendo. Okay, I mean, obviously Japan loves Nintendo. And in Japan, both PlayStation and Xbox declined. Okay, I wonder to what degree that's just a lot of publishers being less excited about platform exclusives, because I know that was a huge selling point when it came to the console market in the earlier generations. Like, I remember if you were playing Halo, then you were buying the latest Xbox, right? And it's like you got the Xbox to play Halo. And I think now there's just less of an incentivization to do that. And I think more games are kind of coming to the other platforms as well. And obviously Microsoft has shifted their strategy, at least in what they're publicly saying. So I wonder to what degree that's a factor here, because you'll note that Nintendo makes a lot of platform exclusives, right? Like I don't think you could play Breath of the Wild on anything but Nintendo. So maybe it's the case that those platforms have these killer apps, whereas all the other platforms are no longer pursuing that strategy. That's my thought, at least. And Switch mostly benefits Nintendo. Switch users buy 25 to 33% fewer games than PS Xbox owners, and over half of the sales are Nintendo's games. Yeah, okay. All right, I think that's probably what's going on here. That would be my guess. Switch's extraordinary sales are for the most part not from net new players, but from cannibalization of two console form factors, living room and handheld. Got it. I mean, Switch is like, it has the versatility to be living room as well, which is pretty cool. The decline of handheld revenues, minus $9 billion since 2011, also offsets roughly half living room growth. Combined console is up a more modest $9 billion or 28%. So, I mean, we're seeing small increases relative to the 2021 number, but the key trend line here is that, gosh, we've stalled, and in a big way, even with, you know, the success of Nintendo. And while Switch 2 is likely mega hit, Gen 9 PlayStation and Xbox sales are both down versus Gen 8 after 49 months. Now a combined 7 million. Okay, what am I looking at here? So this is PlayStation 5 and Xbox, and the new sales delta. Okay, so we're looking at what's changed. So here we have more people in the early months of 2021 purchasing Xbox and PlayStation. Then for some reason, around November of 2021, Xbox went up and suddenly PlayStation went way down. So what happened there? I don't know. Maybe a game came out on Xbox, but that's crazy. So people are not playing PlayStation now, and they haven't gone above the bar since. So there was a lot of people playing Xbox right here. I wonder if this is the release of the Master Chief Halo collection. Maybe that's what it is. Because, I mean, obviously Halo is a big flagship of Microsoft's brand. Xbox brand. I'm not really sure, but that's interesting. So Xbox had this bump, and then everybody was below the line. PC is a big bright spot, adding 65% more content spend than living room console since 2011, and 225% more than combined console, or $30 billion in total. Interesting. So people are spending way more on PC relative to console, and that wasn't always the case. Oh no, I mean, this PC was still much larger than console. It's only around 2016 that console bar started growing, and then it reached its peak in 2020, and then since then, I guess it's kind of gotten a bit smaller relative to the PC market. Interesting. Mobile, though, while all of these have kind of, like, and I mean, look at these three different things, right? I mean, I understand they're all subsets of kind of what is one consumer market as a game dev, but I think there's something to be said here about them being console versus PC versus mobile. Like, these are all different kinds of consumers, I think. I mean, sure, I'm sure there's people who are buying all of them, but I think there's something like what I'm trying to say is I think there's like a really interesting story where kind of all of these three different segments are normalizing to kind of one level. You know, like you saw crazy growth. Like I'd actually like to see this graph again, but just with the deltas, because I think it's probably the case that like, yeah, the console was growing up really big here and mobile was getting up really big here, but kind of everybody's just kind of evening out. And look at this. This looks extremely flat between these 2 years. Looks like it hasn't changed at all. Interesting. So 20 years ago, PC share of non-mobile content spend was 29%. Okay, so let's think about what that means. That means that if you're not playing a game on mobile, then the likelihood that you're spending money on PC is 29%. Is that right? So it's very, very low. PC's only commanding about a third of all the spend. However, now it's 53, so it's more than half. And while console has stagnated, PC has grown. Okay, so PC is taking over, probably taking a lot of the games that people would have otherwise been engaging with on the consoles, which I think most people would agree that, yeah, the PC master race is kind of winning in the long run. If only because even to make a game, like a gaming PC at like the same spec'd out hardware as like the best consoles these days, like I feel like you can do a lot with the way that you can make a PC these days. And I guess I know it's been the case that sometimes the console makers like sell the consoles at a loss, but for the most part, I think like you're just gonna get way more bang for your buck if you're just like doing a PC and buying your own graphics card or whatever. I don't know if that's true, but that's my anecdotal thought. The PC ecosystem benefits from many compounding advantages over the console ecosystem, and its momentum is still growing. So I'll just jump into these. We've got more game releases. PlayStation is now releasing its exclusives on PC. Premium Roblox, yeah, that's what I said. Premium Roblox games can only be bought on PC. Interesting. Hundreds of millions of children growing up on Roblox are unlikely to ask for a $500 console to play AAA games. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that too, right? It's just the user base that's growing up in this like UGC ecosystem is just not looking for the boxed AAA product. They want to play you know, the silly prison simulator or whatever it is on Roblox. Portable Windows-based gaming devices are growing in popularity and have access to full Steam PC catalogs and entitlements. Even with the 21 to 2024 stall, console to PC spend grew 4% annually, short of mobile's 12%, which was powered by billions of new players, but still healthy. So we're seeing console and PC spend is growing, but it's just nowhere near as much as mobile. Okay. But Steam's consolidation of the PC gamers provides insight into who is driving the category growth. In 2024, Steam's APAC MAU exceeds its total MAU in 2017. I don't know what APAC means. I'm looking at the bottom here to see if it explains it. I don't think it is, but clearly this is something related to, I mean, I'm guessing it's some sort of language thing. Maybe it has to do with, because he's labeling these by language. So what is he saying here? He's saying that the APAC MAU, I guess what he's saying is that APAC must be English to Chinese. That must be some sort of, I don't know why the acronym is APAC, but I guess that's a collection of these languages. And he's saying that this is far exceeding all the other MAU. So if you're trying to translate your game, I mean, back when I was making games, they would say EFIGs, I think. English, French, Italian, German, Spanish. But now I guess it's APEC. But yeah, Chinese plus English. And then these are the other players here. The largest share of Steam users now use Chinese as their default client language, which probably underrepresents China's total share of Steam users. Interesting. Wow. The Chinese have arrived. I mean, they've always been here, but they were just 20%, and now they're like far more. Far more. All right. Very interesting. So, I mean, obviously that makes sense. There's a lot of Chinese people. So good for Steam for, I guess, growing that market, which is very interesting, right? Because I know China can be very controlling with respect to what they allow. I know it's the case that you can't publish in China without partnering with a Chinese corporation. So I wonder if Steam partners with a Chinese corporation or exactly what's happening there. Or what, are they pirating it? Maybe. I'm not really sure. I don't know what the Chinese gamer experience looks like when it comes to Steam. Though I do know, I mean, they have a crazy mobile market out there. Reign of Kings. CCUs affirm APAC's role in Steam user growth. CCUs peak when America sleeps, and China gets home, and bottom when America is off work, but China is out work. Interesting. Okay. So what they're saying is that the concurrent users is lowest when America is off of work and China's out work, just because even with the Americans playing as hard as they can, they don't even compete to the Chinese when they're getting in their game on. Interesting. All right. So now the relevance of China and other emerging markets. So we've been talking about China. I guess we're going to go deep on China now. So since 2011, consumer video game spend in China has grown by 39 billion, roughly a third of global growth. Wow. And 22% of the total market. So where are Wow, a third of global growth is coming from just China. I mean, I'm not surprised by that. I think that makes sense. But only 20% of China's domestic spend goes to imported titles, some of which are banned. Total spend is up 50%, yet imported spend is down 5%. Interesting. So the Chinese know their own audience. So this is the green, the light green part is the Chinese games. And that is what is growing and taking up a huge percent of the market share. The non-Chinese games have stayed relatively stagnant around this, I don't know, maybe 7 billion, 6 billion mark, let's say. And they haven't grown that much, which is interesting. I mean, why is it that the Chinese are doing such a better job at growing their spend while the Western markets are not? Is it perhaps because the Chinese games do a much better job at increasing that ceiling and monetizing their whale users, and the Western games are not doing as good a job at that? That would be my guess. China made game share of China video game content spend. Okay, so it's growing and growing and growing. So what this is saying is previously the Chinese games were only 60% of the Chinese spend, but now they're like 80%. So people are really enjoying the Chinese games. And I mean, look at the quality recently coming out of games like Black Myth Wukong. I think that game is I think that game's a really important game to understanding the emerging let's call it the prestige big box AAA market. Oh, here we go. Here's the monkey man himself. Mr. What's his name? I forget the name of the main character. AAA games from China and for China are now achieving sales figures in China that challenge the worldwide sales of the most acclaimed Western AAA titles. Yeah, I mean, they're delivering the quality, which is awesome. So, Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Black Myth Wukong, God of War, Elden Ring. I think it's also just a very different kind of game, Like, I think most people in China are not playing this kind of game. I think most people in China are playing the in-app purchase games, or at least that's driving clearly a majority of the revenue. Good for them. I think they should be really proud of that game, whoever contributed to it. China's exports are soaring too. Genshin is one of the few titles to gross over 9 billion. Almost half was outside of China. Marvel Rivals is also one of the biggest releases in years. Interesting. Oh, and Path of Exile 2 is a Chinese game? I didn't know that. I haven't been following that, but I've heard a lot of people at work talking about it. Splitgate? Oh, is American, I see. Interesting. Altogether, China's developers have grown their share of non-China content spend from 0.5% to 13%. They have grown their share of non-China content spend. Interesting. So is what they're saying here? They are growing the amount of money they're making from their Chinese games in non-Chinese markets. I think that's what he's saying. In total, 42% of total worldwide growth since 2011 went to Chinese developers. Wow. That's wild. Through domestic spend on Chinese title or foreign imports on them. Wow. So where is the game industry growing? It's growing in China. So if you want to make money in games, you better make it Chinese, baby, because that's who's playing the games. And so total growth for Chinese developers since 2011 is less than headlines suggest. Mobile added 41 billion, while console added 31 billion. I see. So here's the Chinese mobile developers. They're obviously carrying a ton of the weight here. Good for them. And while China is the largest, most mature, and regulated non-Western market, and oh yeah, I mean, let's talk about the regulation. Isn't it crazy too? Because China will like ban people for playing too much games. I think there's like a limit on how much kids can play. And yet, despite that, or maybe because of that, they're making crazy numbers here. So we got PUBG, Free Fire, Roblox, Call of Duty, Fortnite, League of Legends. So does Roblox really make more money than Reign of Kings? Does it really? I don't know if that's true. It may. I just don't know. These non-Western titles thrive partly by focusing on lower device specifications, but also by investing in and prioritizing different cultural events and tones. So let's see what's happening here. So Fortnite is engaging Ariana Grande and the Winterfest. Okay. PUBG is engaging Blackpink. Are they larger than Ariana Grande? I mean, probably, honestly. And Ramadan. Okay. Did Fortnite have a Ramadan festival? I don't know. Maybe they did. Free Fire Battle Royale events. Okay, I don't know what that is. Free Fire. So they're hanging out with BTS. I mean, those guys are obviously very large. And they're engaging with Diwali. So these are holidays that are not Western-centric. They're Eastern-centric. And as a result, they're growing that user base because they feel heard. Okay. As foreign markets grow, their domestic production capabilities and supply grow, too. And this always results in national preferences then shifting to local product. Okay. So I see what you're saying. So basically what they're saying is, as these foreign... So basically, like, as the people in India are getting better at making their own games, once that quality bar is close enough to the American games, people are going to always choose to play the Indian games because that's the one that's servicing their niche, right? And that makes sense. So basically, as this industry matures, we're going to see an increasing less of a kind of market dominance from the kind of Western-centric titles. Interesting. Okay, the films that now top the Chinese box office are not just made in China. They're fundamentally of China and for Chinese audiences. Yeah, I mean, this is such a huge point, and I feel like this is really something that I appreciate him bringing into. Like, this is the kind of insight that I really appreciate from Matthew Ball. He's saying they're not just, it's not copycats, right? They're making games, they're making movies that are seeking a unique Chinese audience and delivering things that the American films are failing to deliver. So what's happening here? So Wolf Warrior came out, and this Rambo-style action film in which a muscled and jaded Chinese hero rescues Africa from American imperialism and bioterror. I mean, who doesn't love taking down the Americans? The bad guy is played by New York-born Frank Grillo, previously an evil mercenary in Captain America, and is scolded by the hero for America's role in slave trade. I see. So basically, it's appealing to Chinese nationalism and maybe a little anti-Americanism. A metaphor for climate change in which Chinese scientists leading the nations of the world, with notable absence of the U.S., to save the planet, which will be engulfed by the sun. Very cool. And then Ni Za, a family-oriented film that resembles animated Disney hits, particularly Frozen. Like Wukong, it focuses on 16th century folklore, so maybe Journey to the West or something like that, about a mischievous but misunderstood boy from a powerful spirit pearl. Interesting. Interesting. So what we're saying here is that not only is the quality level increasing, but the niche appeal to their market is increasing. And with those two factors kind of collide, it's like people are always going to choose the Chinese content. Okay. As Nollywood has developed, what is Nollywood? Oh, Nigerian-made films, including those released during COVID, toppled former chart toppers like Avengers, Endgame, and Avatar. Interesting. So this is another example where basically the Nigerians are making content for themselves, and who wants to watch a bunch of white guys when you can watch people who actually look like you and share a cultural experience? Centers of Jedediah Judah, a single mother of 5 sons from different fathers and tribes, facing financial strain due to her chronic kidney disease. Okay, interesting. So this earned 1.2 times the amount that Avengers Endgame did. Wow. That's crazy. And I mean, this is a very different, this is not something I would expect to be topping the charts for Avengers Endgame in the States. So it's just meeting a very different audience that's interested in that kind of thing. A single mother of 5 sons from different fathers and tribes. Okay, wow. The Wedding Party, a classic rom-com focused on the extravagant and chaotic wedding of Dooney and Dozy as they navigate meddling families, uninvited exes, and unexpected dramas. Man, this really makes me want to watch some of these movies now to get an idea on kind of how these cultures have like a divergent I don't know, take on like the classic rom-com. Like I'd be very interested in that. A gangster comedy that focuses on tough ghetto leader caught between her gangster crew and her affluent family. Chaos ensues when a heist goes wrong. Wow, interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I would never expect an American film about a woman with 5 sons from 5 different fathers from 5 different tribes earning more than Avengers Endgame. So I think that really goes to show, like, it's a totally different audience. And that is awesome that they are creating content for their own people. I mean, and probably broader too, right? Because it's not like, I mean, I don't know how much, what the, Western penetration looks like for A Tribe Called Judah. But it was clearly the case earlier that the Chinese games are making a huge impact on the Western markets as well. India has always had a strong, and I mean, that's crazy too, because it wasn't always the case, right? Like, most people have never even heard of Reign of Kings. And then it's like Black Myth Wukong, because it is in that, coveted kind of prestige AAA sector, it has like a lot of people talking about it, which is interesting. India has always had a strong domestic film industry, and as a result, only 3 of the 50th highest grossing films of all time comes from outside of Bollywood. Whoa, what? What? Let me read that again. Only 3 of the 50th highest grossing films of all time have come from outside of Bollywood? Wow, I had no idea. Did you know that? That's crazy. And holy shit, what is this? Bahubali 2. I've never even heard of that movie. And it made a bajillion dollars. I mean, how much is this times Avengers 4? Like 4 times? I gotta check out that movie. That movie must be really good. Bahubali 2. I wonder how good Bahubali was. I've never even heard of that one. That's crazy. Wow, that's so shocking. I never even knew that. So only 3 of the films came from outside of India. They all seem to be American films. These are the Avengers films and Avatar. But wow, so these are all Bollywood. So I wonder if these Bollywood films are better. I mean, I would assume that they're better if they're making more money, but maybe not always the case. We got to look up the Rotten Tomatoes on Bahubali. I got to check that movie out. And so, as console PC continues to grow primarily through APAC ROW, there will be more Ganeras, Game Sciences, MiHoYos, and they'll take share in the West too. I see. So basically, the Chinese, the Nigerians, the Indians, they're eating our lunch as Americans because our products are not appealing to them. So we're losing market share. We're losing market dominance. We didn't even have market dominance, evidently. But it's certainly in the case, in the places where we do, we're losing it. We are losing it. Wow. All right. So that is the relevance of China in these emerging markets. They're taking our lunch. All right. So the next part here is the hostility of modern console/PC content marketplace. All right. With many new players, console PC growth relies on pricing, yet publisher struggles to keep them. Each decade, packaged prices are falling in real terms, right? And I mean, this is a known issue, right? Because games should be costing something like $80 to $100 per packaged game, but they're still selling for like $60 to $70, and a lot of them are selling only at discount. I heard something like 30% of games sell at the listed price, 30% of games sell at a discounted price, and the rest are pirated. That's what I heard somebody say once. I don't know if that's true, but it might be. Wow. So basically, the price for this packaged game is just going down and down and down. Interesting. So they added a price hike here for the new games that were coming out. I guess this is when games went from like $60 to $70 maybe. But it only helped so much because even still, I guess due to what I'm guessing is inflationary factors, that new price is just decreasing more and more. The real price, which I'm guessing is measured relative to other factors. Interesting. So what do you do for that? I mean, because clearly the consumers are not interested in paying $90 for a game, right? You just got to monetize them better, I guess, once they buy. Hence, the rise of the battle pass, right? In nearly all media categories, consumers expect and digest annual inflation adjustments. Several categories have massively increased their real pricing. So you can see that the movie ticket price has gone up from 2010 of about $8 to 2020 of about $12. The concert price has gone up from $60 to $140. Holy shit, really? People are paying $140 to go to a concert? That's crazy. Netflix ARPU. I see. So Netflix is increasing their subscription pricing from $8 to $16. But the games are not keeping up. No, they are not. Package prices matter less given DLC microtransaction life services, which raise the spend ceiling. Okay, so this is the ceiling. We've been talking about this earlier. Yet real spending has grown only modestly despite these innovations. Innovations. They are innovations, but I'm sure a lot of players aren't happy to hear that. Because they feel the squeeze. They feel you asking them for, all this crazy bullshit on top of what they already paid. That's crazy. So it's not making up the difference. There are a few explanations for why video gaming's inability to maintain inflation-adjusted prices, let alone grow them. And many are unique to the category. Okay, I'm very interested in this. So let's read these. So challenge number 1 is the anchored expectation. So after 40 years with $10 increases every other generation. And I mean, generation is kind of a terrible way to, it's not a terrible way, but it's just not a great way to measure these games because there's so many other factors versus like what new console's coming out. Game prices and customer expectations for them are quite sticky and heavily scrutinized. And I mean, well, I'll just say in the mobile app market, I think Apple's had a huge effect on that, right? Publishers are losing billions annually to private game trade sales and piracy, and know that any price hike on package sales will spark more of this behavior, thereby cannibalizing the benefit of the price hike. Yeah, I mean, piracy, especially as we go increasingly to these like markets where it's easier to do that, like non-console markets, like PC markets. Yeah, people are pirating the games. The most popular and profitable games globally are typically free to play. This makes it difficult for rival games to push up pricing, while reducing the incentives of market leaders, which have the most pricing power, to do the same. Free-to-play also constrains consumer perceptions on what great games should cost. Right, so basically people are used to not spending any money for the best games, like Clash Royale. And as a result, nobody wants to pay $5 to play your new roguelike. Because why when I could play this other game for free? Vampire Survivors for free, I don't know if that's a free game. For some reason I'm thinking it is. I don't think it is though. DLC tends to have far better economics than the base game, but requires upfront sales first. Well, what is DLC? It's just an add-on, right? So, of course it has better because you're not building the whole game. You're just selling something. As such, publishers are reluctant to hike the base game prices because they're trying to monetize the DLC. Yet the price of DLC, which tends to offer fewer player hours than the base game, is also affected by the price of the base game. Okay. So basically what he's saying is if you're relying on DLC to make your money, well, lowering the price of the base game is hurting how much you can sell that DLC for. The next is sale-only buyers. So research suggests that 30 to 50% of AAA gamers are waiting until games are on sale before purchasing, offsetting the benefit of price increases and constraining value perceptions. And I mean, I think Steam has had a huge factor in driving that because I mean, sales are a huge part of the Steam economy, right? Which is not true for other games, right? Like, the platform has a huge control over those market perceptions, right? Because do mobile games go on sales, like Steam games go on sales? Not even close, right? There is nothing like I mean, maybe they have a market sale, a seasonal sale, but I don't even know that they have one. But there's just nothing close to like the Steam holiday sales in the mobile markets or on the console markets for that matter. Like it's crazy how much of an impact that has had. Like people will plan their holiday shopping around the Steam wish list guide, While which is not the case for mobile. Like I think if you're going to buy a mobile game, you're not waiting for a sale for it. While movies, albums, books, TV series, etc. do not have variable pricing by title or budget, many games do release at $20 to $50 versus $60 to $70 to help drive sales, which again constrain the size of the market. All right. Strategic underpricing. Sorry, so what is this saying? While movies, albums, books, TV series do not have variable pricing, many games do release at 20 to 50 to help drive sales, which again constrains the size of the market. I'm not sure what he's saying there. I guess what he's saying is that they're trying to games are trying to reach a larger. I'm actually not sure what he's trying to say about that. Worse, console plus PC is experiencing ongoing engagement decreases. Even so-called hardcore gamers are increasingly shifting time to other forms of leisure. Okay, so here's our hardcore gamers, and we're losing them. The AA and AAA segments, player playtime and pricing struggles are a surprise. What? Who wouldn't have bet on high-fidelity gaming if they'd seen games of 2024 and 1994? I'm not sure what he's saying by that. I think there's a typo. Unfortunately, improvements in game fidelity, scale, and capability have led to a massive increase in the resources required to build such a game. So basically, wouldn't improvements in game fidelity, scale, and capability lead to a decrease in the amount of resources needed? I think what he's saying is an improvement. I think what he's saying is an increase in the expectation of game fidelity, scale, and capability is leading to a massive increase in the resources required to attain that level of expected fidelity. I think that's what he's saying. So basically, games are getting more and more expensive to make because the quality of the games is getting more and more great. Franchises that cost, which again, this is all the more reason why, Dave the Diver, right? The AA, the III, that is the future of our industry. Or the Chinese games. Let's go to China, everybody. Franchises that cost $50 million per title only 15 years ago now run $200 to $1,500 million or more to develop. There's little sign of slowing at the cost of growth. I think there is sign. I think the industry is like cracking right now. I think there's breaking points and we're surpassed them. But I don't think there's ever going to be another game like GTA 6, honestly. So Halo 6 is here. Wow, Halo 6. How the hell did it cost that much money? That's crazy. Now I understand why Halo Infinite was a failure. That's insane. That's insane considering Halo 4 is here. And what a disappointment Halo 4 and Halo 5 were. That's crazy. Halo 56 has no business being that high. Spider-Man 2. The Last of Us Part 2. So here was The Last of Us Part 1, 50 million. Last of Us Part 2, holy cow, 200 million. My gosh, man, that game did not need to be that long. These games are all just so long, and I wonder if people are even playing all of them. I really think not so much. God of War 5 was such a slog, too. It's so interesting that, like, people are continuing to increase the playtime. Like, it's not worth it. Just make a smaller game. Release it at a lower price point, and if you can reduce the cost to the consumer, like, they'll appreciate it, I think. But I guess they're already getting a pretty good discount. Inflation also hit 20-plus year highs and surged at a pace not seen in 40-plus years, leading to unanticipated debt costs and COLAs that have grown budgets another 10%. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what this graph is showing, but there's an iPhone over here. Got it, okay. What else has grown far faster than gamers or spend? The supply. In 2024, Steam released nearly as many games per month as it did in 2014 overall. Holy shit. That's crazy. This is the indie-pocalypse, by the way. If you ever heard that term, that's what this is. It's this idea that there's so many games these days that no one's going to play yours. And it's partially true. In total, industry-wide content development spend has surged 90% since 2017. 1.6 times the rate of consumer spend growth, and 2 times that of console PC VR spend. So basically, let's understand what that means. That means that the people making the games are spending more money to make them. And in fact, they're spending more money at a rate of 1.6 times of the increase of the people spending money to buy them. So that's not good. That's really shitty, right? So basically, it's almost as if you sold a burger and people enjoyed it. So you're increasing the cost of your ingredients, but not as high as you're increasing the cost of the price, or I guess the amount that people are buying it for. So your margins are decreasing. Uh-oh, that's not good. With higher budgets and more competition, yet few new players' dollars or hours, the competition has become more zero-sum than ever, and break-evens even rarer. So I guess on top here are... Oh, I guess these are just both games that came out. So what is he saying? These are the games that targeted the same player, but they came out around the same time. So these are all what? The generic game player who likes shooting guns and fighting people. So he's got to choose between all these games. Yeah, there's quite a lot. So which one's he going to play? Right? But I imagine that a game like Demon's Souls was able to keep the budget low enough that they were positive on their ROI. I wonder if Demon's Souls is on here. I don't think it is. All right, major package. Okay, so here's another. Oh, this is a fun graph. So here he's saying that Warzone. So I guess he's saying all these are the casuals, I guess. So what is this? The story-based gamers, and these are the casuals who just want to play a game with the buddies. More social multiplayer gaming. So this would be Call of Duty. Came out here. Here's the other Call of Duty. This graph's a little hard to read, admittedly, but it's interesting. And the top games in a given year? Well, they're almost always the top games in any given year. Okay, interesting. Yeah, holy shit, look at that. So here's Call of Duty. Top dog. Back to 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 back. And maybe Hogwarts Legacy squeezes out here, right? A once in a fluke, really. But Call of Duty right behind him with number 2. My gosh, Call of Duty. They know what they're doing. Good for them. Call of Duty is on this list twice for some years. That's crazy. So not only are they the number 1, or the number 2, they're also the number 7 here. What is it? Or it's the number 8. That's crazy. It's Call of Duty's world. We're just living in it. NBA too. Look at NBA popping up here. Something happened here. NBA rose, and then they kind of fought around this area, and now they went down. It's interesting. Oh, there's a lot of probably interesting stories you could look at here. Grand Theft Auto gradually decreasing. Something happened here. Wonder what this was. Maybe it's just a light year, probably mid-corona. So people are playing the live services games more. This is interesting. I love looking at the data and just kind of thinking about the stories that might be present here. Here's Madden, by the way. Look at this through line. Pretty consistent. Right below 2K. So I guess people prefer basketball over football, huh? Interesting. Steam is best in class for game discovery. Still, 80% of 2024's 19,000 releases didn't qualify for the full social feature functionality, meaning that they had less than 5,000 in sales. So there's a lot of great games coming out on Steam. It's a great place to get discovered, a la, what's it called? What am I thinking of? Among Us. However, the majority of these games, 80%, are not making 5,000 in sales. In fact, 150 fewer Steam game new releases grossed. But what's nice about Steam, I will say, what's nice about Steam though is they're not pulling your content off every year. You don't pay them $100. So at least we're not losing the art. And I mean, I guess if no one's playing it, how valuable is it? Yeah, there's an argument there, right? But I think art conservation is really important. So I don't know. It's tricky. That is a tricky question, right? Like, I mean, you got to pay money to host these things on servers, right? It's a fairly low cost relative to, the absorbent $100 a year, or whatever it is that Apple charges. In fact, 150 fewer Steam new releases grossed greater than 100K last year than in 2016. So basically, far less games are passing that 100K mark, even though users are up 250. So, and I think that's probably a consolidation. It's probably just, yeah, and user spend is up 200%. So clearly what's happening is they're just spending more in the existing games that they're playing. They're spending less and kind of experimenting with new games. Steam users play only 4 games a year. Wow. Most people only play 4 games a year from Steam. I wonder how that compares to cinema and concerts. Like, what's the median concerts attended for someone who enjoys live music? What's the median number of films watched by someone who enjoys cinema? I'd be interested to hear that by comparison, because that's interesting. I think 4 is pretty low, right? I mean, so 1 every 3 months on average is. I feel like gamers are probably playing more than once every 3 months, but I guess it's just the case that they are really enjoying playing the same game. And I wonder also, what % of these games are just a refresher on the games they're already playing, right? Because there's the guy who's playing the latest NBA game as soon as it comes out, or the latest Call of Duty game as soon as it comes out. And so is that making up 1 out of these 4 games on average? And so it's really only 3 new games, right? As in new franchises? Or is it even less than that? I wonder what % of this is indie games too. Because I bet not a lot of people are playing indie games relative to other games. I would assume that indies have a pretty low share of the market, but I don't know. And then what's this? Playtime on Steam by year. So this is a fun graph. Okay. So basically, what's happening is that in 2024, 15% of the playtime went to games that year. Then 35% went to recent games. And then the remaining 50% went to old games. Or is it literally just 13% is just Counter-Strike? Is it really just Counter-Strike? That's crazy. What? Is Counter-Strike that popular? That's insane. That's crazy. So Counter-Strike made up equal playtime to all the games released that year? Is that what you're telling me? What? No way. That's crazy. Wow. I don't know if I can believe that. That's insane. Really? In 2023, people played Counter-Strike 3 times more than they played all of the games that were released that year? What? No way. I don't know if I believe that, but that's crazy. That's crazy. So, wow, yeah. People, I mean, the real story here is like 85% is just existing games. People aren't playing the new stuff. And now, what portion is that because they are waiting for a sale versus they just don't want to try something different? I'm not sure. But that'd be something I'd like to tease out of the data. And among the thousands of annual releases fighting for 12% of the playtime, number 1 gets 20%. Numbers 1 to 10 take 60%. A share that has grown as output swelled. Yeah, I mean, this is really bad. This is really bad. Even with Steam's discovery being as good as it is, I think Steam really needs... All right, I'm putting my bets on it, okay? So tell me I'm right in 10 years when it finally comes out. But Steam needs something like Spotify's Discover Weekly, right? Where you can just experience a different game, get a taste for it, and we can drive sales through kind of a curated user demo experience, because I know Steam games have demos, but you have to find the page first. And so I think that we're going to need to, we need to see like a better kind of like Discover Weekly experience where you can kind of just pop into a game, try something out, and, you know, have fun. And then see if you like it. And then maybe check out that artist and check out more games from them. In total, the same 5 franchises on PC, which are 6 to 22 years old, have averaged 30% of playtime for 4 years straight. On PS Xbox, 7 to 31 years, it's a stunning 43%. So in total, the same 5 franchises, which are the big 5, Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Fortnite, League of Legends, and Minecraft, they have averaged 30% of playtime for 4 years straight. I bet it's even worse on mobile, honestly. I think mobile is an even worse platform for discovery of new emergent content. So I would love to see what those numbers look like on mobile, because that's kind of something I'm a little more interested in right now. But wow. Yeah, I mean, that's terrible. What else is there to say? People are not seeing new art. And I think it's not because they don't want new art. I think it's just because they feel like the price points are prohibitive, and and what else? And I think the discovery is, I mean, it's better than most, but I think it's still just not good compared to other media. Excluding annual releases, NBA 2K, but including sequels, only 6% of game time in 2023 was for new games, a share that was high versus 21, 22, 24. Tens of billions in development and marketing investment, and thousands of games competed for that 6.5%. The 6.5%, what is this? It's the amount of game time in 2023 for new games, excluding the annual releases that we were talking about, but including sequels. Okay, so basically only 6.5% of game time is going to these new games. Wow. Now, I will say, though, there's probably a factor here where new games are more likely these kind of one-off bespoke experiences. Like, I think the median play time for a lot of those games, these like Spider-Man 2, is obviously much lower than NBA 2K. Because I think Spider-Man 2 has a story that you finish, and I think people play NBA 2K forever. So I think there's a factor there that maybe we're not appreciating, but that's crazy. So 6.5% is how much time people are spending on new games. Very, very low. And then here's where the breakdown was. Diablo, Hogwarts, Baldur's, Starfield, and then 3% for everything else. So this is where the indie developers get a little tiny piece probably within this, right? It's like you get a slice of the slice of the slice of the pie. A very small little tiny piece. Black hole games. Okay, I heard this term earlier in the presentation, so I think he's going to define it now. This is the phenomenon whereby a massive franchise has such a hold on players that it's impossible for a new game to pull them away. And I think this is mostly what's happening on mobile. So to compete with a black hole game, a competitor must offer an experience that can overcome a player's, number one, hundreds or thousands of hours achieving skill mastery and comfort, hundreds of thousands of dollars in purchased entitlements, hundreds or millions or billions of player connections and playmates, hundreds of millions of hours of investment dollars in the creator ecosystem, and then confidence that their scarce time, money, effort, and social signaling will be durably rewarded. Wow, I see. So that's what he means by black hole. You start to play it, and you love it, and you never, ever leave. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's like, is there a black hole in like other... It's kind of interesting too, because I guess games are in many ways like a social space, and part of their monetization framework needs to be around that, right? Because if you go to the bar, you have a drink and you can socialize there, but you're buying a drink every time you go. Whereas games, they don't charge you to get in the door, right? If you want to go there to socialize with your friends because, you know, you got your buddies and you want to hang out on Discord for the evening, you know, a lot of young people are not going to the bar. They're going to play Fortnite, right? And Fortnite doesn't charge you to get in the door, which is interesting. Like there's a factor there. Like the traditional like social spaces, these so-called third spaces where people are occupying their time, they're monetized in a very different framework than these games are. Interesting. So these black holes are where you get stuck. But you don't, but I mean, interesting. I mean, I guess you could get stuck at the bar. But you're not going to get stuck on like an artist genre in music, right? I mean, I'm sure there's people who only go to like one type of music concert, but I think there's something different here, and I think the different factor is this idea of like a social space where you kind of just go to this place and it occupies your time. You're like encapsulated within this area, and it's just a matter of whether or not they're effectively monetizing your spend there. All right, well, behind black hole games is not just Metcalfe's law, the value of a network is a quadratic function. Okay, I don't know what that means. But Stronger-Reed's law, it's an exponential function. Interesting, okay. I'm not familiar with these frameworks, but I guess what it's saying is that... Okay, so what it's saying is that a network, so basically, you know, if you add another so yeah, I guess the Sarnoff law would be, I guess, if you add another person here, they're just another node in the network. But that's not correct, because actually they're another node and they engage with the other people beside them. Oh no, in this case, actually, they're engaging with everybody else, so that's the quadratic. But that's not the case, is what he's saying, because what he's saying is that, I guess what he's saying is that in the context of a social network, it's the case that you're experiencing, I guess, unique experiences with kind of the kind of permutations of hanging out with just this guy, or just this guy and this guy also. And because of that, it's leading to what he's calling an exponential function. Because not only is there combinations between you and everybody else, but it's like you plus somebody else, right? It's like these 3-person connections, I think, is what he's trying to communicate here. So Reed's law observes the network strength and network size, as well as the group and subgroup formation. Okay, yeah, so that's just what I said. An A+ game that lacks a player's squad is no A+ game. Okay, yeah. Very interesting. As black hole games strengthen, supply grows, but players stagnate. Even the best franchises often face falling sales, but higher budgets across successive releases. Huh. Yeah, I have no idea why this game price doubled. Like, that's crazy to me. What is Insomniac doing? Like, Insomniac's a smart company. Why are they spending twice the budget? Is it just because the cost of paying people in California has increased that much? I don't know. I wonder what is happening. Like that's what I want to see. I know he didn't go into it here, but that's really the part that I think is missing for me in this graph, is like breaking down this bar and explaining where the different aspects of the development costs have went to. Obviously, I'm sure half of it is marketing. But is it on different sectors? Like, is the marketing not returning the ROI that it needs to? I'm not sure, but I really want to go into greater granularity on this bar here. Because this is crazy, right? The fact that it costs twice the cost. Like, why is that happening? It's easy to argue that sequel budgets should be lower given the uncertainty of matching, let alone growing the sales of the prior entry. Yes, okay, that's what I said. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So, but what? But it's not easy to convince those who skipped or didn't finish a game to spend $70 on a sequel, or earn another $70 and 25 hours from those who did. Right, okay. So basically, I understand the world's more expansive, but I kind of got enough. And this is exactly how I felt playing the new God of War game, Ragnarok. I was like, I'm so bored. You know, like, the game doesn't need to be this long. Same thing with The Last of Us. Oh my gosh, that game was way too long. And building a richer, deeper, and more expansive game is a natural response to a market that competes for increasingly scarce players' times and spend. So everything's just getting more and more cinematic. Is it worth it? Probably not. Well, I guess this is where the budget went. They ballooned the mocap cinematics by 2 times. To endure, live service titles need to replace a user's existing weekly to daily habit, which makes a feature content light launch an even greater challenge. Splitgate. Okay, so everybody knows about Splitgate. It was a huge game that came out. It was like, an indie darling if there ever was one. and then it really fell off the map in a big way. So it kind of whoop, and then they stopped and started doing Splitgate 2. Stanford grad, by the way, fellow Tree made that game. Even at, I believe his name is Ian. Even at the cultural peak, many would-be gas leaders have fewer games as a service leaders have fewer players than long-running games as a service leaders, averaged over 40 plus years. I'm not sure what he means by that. I guess what he's saying is that the new entrants are not competing with the incumbents. I think that's what he's saying, maybe. I'm not sure. And after a hit launch, a new title must sustain against market leaders powered by extraordinarily effective, profitable, and substantial releases and infrastructure. Right, so it's like your new game comes out, how is it going to compete against the Call of Duty machine of 3,000 people employed across 15 different Activision-owned studios and units? Yeah, it's a machine if there ever was one. They're kicking ass. With rising costs of support, shrinking player bases, and strengthening black holes, new live service titles are forced to call it quits earlier than ever. So this is these games, and they're not lasting very long. So For Honor didn't last very long, though For Honor I think was kind of a disappointment when it released. Skull and Bones, yikes. So a lot of these games are just saying hello, and then they're saying goodbye, sometimes even within the same year. So what's going on? The exhaustion... Oh my god, this is a hell of a sentence, Matthew. The exhaustion of decades-plus growth drivers that grew players' playtime and spend coincided with evolving user behaviors, changing monetization models, and growing lock-in effects that exacerbated long-running competitive and budgetary escalations, while growth concentrated in foreign markets that shifted to local productions and then took shares abroad, and occurred alongside acute macroeconomic financial events and epidemics, though he said those seemingly weren't that substantial, were worsened by microeconomic platform policy shifts, as well as the emergence of new and hyper-viral substitutes and foreign-based competition, alongside too many would-be new growth drivers that have yet to deliver. And I mean, frankly, I don't think a lot of these new growth drivers are as promising as they would need to be to put us in a stance where we could have an optimistic outlook. Man. So people aren't spending more. The market size is decreasing. And of the Western market size, it's getting increasingly eaten by the foreign markets, which are growing. So that's what we learned today. Wow. Really helpful stuff. This presentation is amazing. I'm really appreciating how much I learned from this lesson. If you've stuck along this long, I hope you're having a good time too. Wow, we've been at this at an hour and a half. This is a hell of a presentation. The confluence of factors explains why the market stagnated, not just fell, so very short of external and not publicly available internal forecasts, and why so many titles have missed internal expectations or even their production costs, and why so many game makers reevaluated their development pipelines and, more often than not, canceled scores of titles to instead refocus on existing hits, and why venture capitalists retreated back down to the 2018-2019 investment levels, even though worldwide spend is up 34%. Why PlayStation, a platform with 100 million monthly active users and 30 billion in revenue, has seen revenues grow 67% since 2019, but profits fall by 6% to a 7% income margin. And employees suffered 3 straight years of record layoffs, which, I mean, I could personally attest to seeing so many of my buddies on LinkedIn being like, yo, I'm looking for work. 35,000 total before counting unreported layoffs and those without specified headcount. Oh boy. 8,000, 10,000, and in 2024, a record nearly 15,000 layoffs. Holy shit. That's crazy. And you gotta think, the research has shown that only 50% of people who are in the job market get that role within the next 6 months, right? So a considerable portion of these layoffs are coming into an already greatly, oversaturated job market of people here who are still trying to find a job after getting laid off in 2023. Oh boy, not good. Prompting nearly every platform and publisher to start aggressively pursuing customers on every channel. So PlayStation is trying to engage the PC users through the PlayStation Network. Xbox is saying your laptop is an Xbox, which obviously it is not, but it's saying that you can play Xbox games all over because they're running out of customers. And 2024 Square Enix content strategy. We will now aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy. All right. Console is dying. You heard it here first, folks. The console market is dead. Or at least it's dying. So, but how can the video game industry return to growth rather than just fight over the same players, hours, and spent? And at even higher costs. Oh no, are we going to hear some optimism from Mr. Ball? Without the new growth engines, the video game market is stuck in a vicious cycle. All right, and then here it is. Another 100 slides discussing the opportunity. All right, so we've gone about half of this presentation talking about the sad stuff. We've talked about why the foreign markets are decreasing the Western market share. We've talked about why the people are playing games less and they're playing new games less. But now Matthew Ball is here to tell us why there's still hope. All right. But I think that's been enough from me today. I might do another video on this, but I think probably not. I'll probably just go through it on my own. But if you're interested in his work, hey, check it out. This is available now as an early sneak preview for a very limited time. And you can hear what this very insightful pundit, Mr. Ball, has to say about the emerging opportunities of 2025 and beyond. So I hope you enjoy that. Thanks for watching. If you stuck around the whole time, I want to hear your thoughts. You've been watching this video for an hour and a half. Tell me, man, what do you think? Like, do you think we're going downhill? Do you think that there's an opportunity for us to market pivot here? I genuinely want to know what your thoughts are, and I'll reply to the comments if you've got a question, because I love talking about this stuff, and I'm excited to see what happens. So yeah, I want to see what he thinks is going to happen for 2025. Stay tuned.